Hi everyone, it's Tim. This is a video explaining a recent project I did to help my application for a job at TT Games, the well-known creators of the LEGO games, such as LEGO Harry Potter, LEGO Marvel Superheroes, and LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. This project is similar to a design test, but I did not get given this design test by a company, but challenged myself. I tend to do this when I'm applying for a studio that I'm particularly passionate about. I've played LEGO games since I was a kid, and have fond memories of going to the local library with a friend to play LEGO Star Wars, as they had a Nintendo Wii, which you could rent out for £1. So whenever I see a position at TT Games, I'm always keen to put together the best application possible. For this design challenge, I'm going to make something for LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. There's a lot of content already in the game. The main 9 films that make up the Star Wars universe are all covered in the main game. It felt a little unnatural to me to design content or a level that had already been made in the game, so I was keen to find something that hadn't already been created but would fit into the game. I am a big fan of Star Wars and have always been, so it occurred to me that there are many other stories in the Star Wars universe that aren't just in the core films. For example, the Clone Wars series, the Rebels series, The Mandalorian, and the other Disney Plus shows like Andor. The jobs I'm applying for are a level designer position and a world designer position, so my project should demonstrate me designing a section of the open world and also a level. Here are the options I came up with after a brainstorm. For the Clone Wars, there's a great fight between Ahsoka and Darth Maul that happens at the end of the show. This could work as a boss fight in the game. The Mandalorian has many one-off storylines throughout the show that I could use. And finally, Andor also has a number of storylines and locations that I could use. The heist storyline, just to name one. But I think the Clone Wars takes the win here. Andor and The Mandalorian are fantastic shows, but I grew up with the Clone Wars, so it has a special place in my heart. And also, I think the boss fight with Darth Maul could be a really interesting thing to design, and fits within the Skywalker Saga, as there are many other boss fights, one of which is also with Darth Maul. For my level, I'll design a boss fight with Darth Maul. I have plenty of rich source material, as the actual boss from the Clone Wars episode was incredibly well put together. It was choreographed and captured by motion capture, which just goes to show the love and care that was put into this sequence.
So when we see Maul fighting, it's going to be really Maul fighting.
Amazing to play Darth Maul again.
Takes it all to another level.
I highly recommend, if you haven't seen this and you're a fan of Star Wars, you should definitely watch it. The first time I watched it, I actually found a guide online and watched it alongside Revenge of the Sith. I would watch a few minutes of the Clone Wars and then go back to Revenge of the Sith, making the timelines as synchronized as I could. It took something like 4 hours, but it really was a cool way to experience the finale. The first step in the process is to play the game and identify something that I can realistically create for this small project. As I progressed, I developed my own design document to take note of game mechanics and the types of puzzles. I laid out the puzzles that I found in the game, identified the different types of levels I found, and also listed the optional open world content. But one thing I noticed was the pace of the game. It's fast, I mean really fast, and very dense, lots happening at once. The story is very compressed. This makes sense considering that they're trying to cover all 9 films, but it means when I'm designing content for the game, I will need to make sure it has a similar pacing. As part of my process, I think it's important to research into the game and the studio who's developed it. The more I can understand about these 2 elements, the more of my designs will fit into the game. As part of this, I like to establish design goals that represent my best bet of what the studio aimed to achieve with the game. On some of the behind-the-scenes footage, Dawn McDerrett, a designer on the game, said,
"We've just really tried to delve into making each planet feel like alive and unique to what it was in the film."
Additionally, Jonathan Smith, head of the game's development, mentioned the team's aim of making the world feel alive. He said they achieved this through space missions, side quests, and secret challenges throughout the open world. So this is what I will base my design goals on. Each area of the game needs to feel alive. The environment needs to be dense with NPC missions and secret challenges. Planets need to feel unique, having a unique look and visual style. If you're enjoying this video, please consider dropping a like below. It really helps to support the channel. Thanks. So now that I have established my design goals, I can move on to creating some of the initial ideas. First, I'll start with the open world design. This will be a small section of the open world that will be based in Mandalore, where there will be missions for the player and secret challenges to unlock kyber bricks. This is my mood board, a collection of art images that represent the kind of place I want to create. The location is the capital of Mandalore called Sundari. This is where I want to base my open world section. It also has really unique architecture to the Star Wars universe, which will help it stand out and achieve one of my design goals. For the 2D design, I will use my mood board along with the open world content I took note of when playing the game. Here are the initial designs of what I now have named the Park Quarter. The average section of the open world in the game has up to 20 to 30 mini-games in. Due to time constraints for my area, I will just create 5. Now onto designing the boss fight with Darth Maul. The best practice to do here, in my opinion, would be to study and analyze all the boss fights in the game. Due to time constraints, I'm not going to be able to do that, but I will be able to study a few boss fights. Shout out to Luke Chapman, who was a designer on the game and actually goes into detail about how he designed the boss fights on his portfolio. This was an invaluable resource when designing my own boss fight. When designing any kind of sequence for a game, I typically use a flowchart, as it's a nice way to visually lay out what's going to happen. For this boss fight, I can largely base the sequence of events on the story of the battle from the Clone Wars show. I started by analyzing the original fight sequence from the Clone Wars show. I created a rough storyboard of the events. As I did this, I then created an initial flowchart of the events for my boss fight underneath. For my own boss fight, I simplified the events and just focused on the location and what type of story beats was happening. For example, were the characters fighting or was it a dialogue scene? I then added some additional elements to my flowchart. For example, in many of the boss fights I played, there would be a unit of enemy troops attack me halfway through the boss fight to break up the pacing. I thought I would do the same here. Additionally, I added a small jumping puzzle that also happens throughout the fight. This also is to break up pacing. Now I'm onto the whiteboxing stage. This is when I create the basic 3D environments for these designs. I found a Lego clone trooper on Sketchfab, rigged it with Mixamo, and then set it up as a third-person controller in Unreal Engine. This obviously isn't Ahsoka, but it will work as a great placeholder. For my open world design, I started by creating the basic shapes based on my 2D design. I then started thinking about colors and the materials and how the environment would look. This is how it finally turned out, after adding all the mini-games within my area and also a tower. Additionally, adding architectural structures based on the Mandalorian city around the playable space to really make it feel like you're inside a city and not just on a floating island. The player can explore this area in whatever way they want. Here you can see a silver container that can be destroyed with a certain type of character. If all 5 of these robots are destroyed by the player, they will get a kyber brick. This is a stone puzzle. The player needs to reposition these stones in the correct order. The player will need to find the stones that are hidden around the area and put them on the podiums corresponding with the colors. The player can additionally find a gold container over here that can be destroyed with a certain type of character. And finally, the tower. Using a droid, the player can activate the elevator. The player will then be able to climb the rest of the tower using these grapple points. At the top, the player will be rewarded with a kyber brick and also will be able to destroy the final droid. This is obviously a collection of quite simple puzzles. And like I said earlier, these areas in the game would be more jam-packed with challenges for the player, but I'm quite proud of what I managed to put together for this small project. Now I will show you my boss fight level design white box. This is the throne room where the fight takes place. There will initially be a cutscene, and then the fight will begin. It will start with a basic lightsaber fight. After the player has reduced Darth Maul's house below halfway, a small contingency of enemy troops will come in to attack the player. After you defeat these troops, Darth Maul will break the window and escape outside. The player will follow Darth Maul out and fight on the struts above the city. There will be another lightsaber fight where the player will have to jump between struts. Maul then attempts to escape. The player will have to do a small jumping puzzle to chase him. The player will then have one final lightsaber fight with the enemy. At the end of this, the player will go through a cinematic action sequence where they will have to press buttons at certain times to defeat Darth Maul. That was my white box designs for my open world area and the boss fight. A disclaimer, game design is an iterative process. I would love to make these levels functional and test them, get feedback and iterate, and then repeat that process multiple times. For the time scale of this project, that's not possible. So it's best to think of these puzzles not as the final product, but as an initial idea of what they could be. Thanks for watching my little overview of this project. This has been a completely passion-filled project. I made it to help my application at TT Games, and I thought it was probably a cool idea to make it into a video for the channel as well. Also, you can find various links in the description below to references that I've made in this video. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel, as it really supports the making of these videos. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed.